Hi and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Tonight's story is not about a dramatic confrontation or a screaming match. No, this story starts quietly, with the sound of water still boiling on the stove. Long after dinner should have been over, the clock read 12:46 a.m. The house was completely dark, but the kitchen light had this eerie glow to it, like it had just been turned off moments before. I wasn't supposed to be home, and technically, I wasn't. I was hiding in the laundry room, behind the sliding door, holding my breath like some pitiful parody of a man. My hands were shaking. I hated myself for even being there. But I had to know. You don't just accidentally leave a silk blouse with unfamiliar cologne hanging on the bathroom hook. You don't smile at texts that come in during dinner and lock your phone screen when I lean in. You don't suddenly have team retreats where spouses aren't invited. The last text she sent me that night said, "Babe, heading to Myra's after dinner. Crashing there, too tired to drive. Love you." And that would have worked. It really would have. Except Mira had already texted me earlier that day, confused, because she had the flu, and Lana hadn't checked in on her all week. So I waited. The front door clicked at exactly 12:49 a.m. I heard the shuffle of her heels being slipped off, the drop of her keys in the bowl by the door. Then silence. I imagined her standing there, squinting into the dark, probably wondering why the kitchen still smelled like overcooked pasta and soy sauce. She turned on the light. I could hear her footsteps on the tile floor, slow and cautious. A creak of a cabinet door. A glass filled. A long sip of water. Then, she gasped. I didn't see her face. I didn't need to, because what she saw was the dinner table. 2 plates, 2 wine glasses, and a framed photo of our wedding night smashed into the centerpiece. Next to it, printed in bold on a single sheet of paper, was a screenshot of her text conversation with someone saved in her phone as Ben, Jim. Not Ben from the gym. Ben from her past. The one she told me was just a college fling. She had typed, "It's just one night. He's clueless anyway. I'll be home late." She wasn't prepared for any of this. And I wasn't prepared for what I'd find in her purse when she ran upstairs. A small hotel receipt, signed with her name, and a note from Ben, written on the back. There was a long stretch of silence after she went upstairs. I didn't move from the laundry room. The sound of her footsteps above was slow, uneven, almost, like she couldn't decide whether to march up confidently or collapse on the stairs. When the bedroom door clicked shut, I finally emerged. My legs were stiff. My chest was tight. But I wasn't ready to face her. Not yet. I was still trying to process the look of fear on her face when she saw the table. I didn't even need to be in the room to feel it. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the cold plate of spaghetti I had made hours earlier. Not because I was hungry. I made it to keep myself from falling apart. To give myself something normal to do before everything fell to pieces. But the pasta was dry now, the sauce cracked, the smell sour. It matched the mood perfectly. When I finally went upstairs, I expected her to be waiting. Maybe ready with excuses. Maybe ready to yell. But she was sitting on the edge of the bed, still dressed, holding her phone like it was the only solid thing in her world. She didn't look at me when I stepped in. She just said, "You went through my things?" I didn't answer. Instead, I reached for her purse, the same one she dropped near the bed. She didn't stop me. Maybe she knew she couldn't anymore. I opened it and pulled out the folded hotel receipt she didn't even bother hiding. It was from a mid-range boutique hotel 30 minutes away. Room 418. Dated that same night. Time stamped 10:22 p.m. I held it up without a word. She looked away. There was something else, tucked between a lip gloss and a pack of gum. A small, folded piece of hotel stationery. I unfolded it slowly, almost hoping it would be blank. But no. A message scrawled in dark blue ink, neat and deliberate. Tonight felt right. Maybe it's always been you. B. I read it out loud. Her head dropped into her hands. And that's when it hit me, not just the betrayal but the clarity. She didn't just make a mistake. This wasn't a drunken lapse or a heat-of-the-moment failure. This was something else. Something bigger. She meant it. She planned it. She wanted it. and she was prepared to walk back into this house like nothing happened. I sat down across from her, not even sure what I expected her to say. An apology? A denial? A lie, maybe, because lies at least give you something to push against. But all she said was, "I didn't think you'd ever know." I asked her why. She whispered, "Because you never fight back. You'd rather just hurt in silence." I didn't respond to that. I didn't need to, because the truth was, she was right. I had been silent. I had been trying so hard to keep the peace, to be the understanding husband, that I ignored the gut feelings that clawed at me for months. I didn't want to believe she was capable of this. I didn't want to be alone. But that night, the boiling water, the wedding photo, the cold dinner, that was me fighting back. My version of a scream. She finally stood up, pacing the room, wringing her hands. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she muttered. "It was just supposed to be fun. One night." But the note in her purse said otherwise. "Maybe it's always been you. Who writes that after one night?" That's when I asked the question I never thought I'd ask. "How many times?" She looked at me, eyes red, lip trembling. But she didn't answer. And that silence was worse than any number she could have said. I walked out of the room, went down to the garage, slept in the car. But I didn't just sleep. I started making a plan. And what I did the next morning, even I didn't see it coming. The morning after wasn't filled with shouting, or tears, or slamming doors like you'd expect. No dramatic fights or broken plates. Just the sound of birds chirping outside our window, and the slow drip of the coffee pot I had turned on out of habit more than anything else. The world outside had the audacity to be calm, even cheerful. Meanwhile, my entire life had cracked in half sometime between midnight and sunrise. I had slept in the garage, well, not really slept. I laid back in the driver's seat of my dusty Honda, staring at the ceiling and playing her words over and over in my head. "It was just supposed to be fun. You never fight back. I didn't think you'd ever know." That last one stung the most. It didn't just say she betrayed me. It said she underestimated me. Like my pain was small and manageable. Like I was too soft to even notice. By 7 a.m., I was back in the house. She was still upstairs. I could hear the floor creak above the kitchen. She was probably awake but unsure of what to say, or maybe calculating how to spin things, rehearsing excuses in the mirror. I didn't care anymore. I didn't need her words. I needed action. So I made breakfast. Not for her. For me. For the first time in years, I decided to do something purely for myself. Pancakes, eggs, bacon. I plated it neatly. But beside my plate on the table, I placed something else. Her wedding ring, still resting in the velvet box she hadn't touched since last night. And next to it, a printed copy of the hotel receipt and the note signed, B. Then I added something new, a photograph. It was one I had printed at 3:30 a.m. from my phone, using my office printer upstairs. Grainy, but clear enough. It was taken through a car windshield. Her and Ben, standing in the parking lot of that hotel, his hand on her waist, her head tilted just so, laughing, leaning in. It was time-stamped, dated, irrefutable. That's what I wanted. Not a confrontation. Not a confession. I wanted her to walk into that kitchen and realize there was no way out of this. And then I waited. When she finally came down the stairs, she was barefoot, wearing one of my old college sweatshirts, the one with the faded navy lettering and the frayed cuffs. She always said it was her favorite because it smelled like me. Seeing her in it now made my stomach turn. She stepped into the kitchen and froze. Her eyes darted between the breakfast plate, the receipt, the note, and then the photo. She didn't even try to deny it. "Where did you get this?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I shrugged. "Does it matter?" She stared at the photo like it might suddenly disappear if she blinked enough. Like she could erase it from reality if she just stood still. But it didn't go away. It never will. "I was going to tell you," she said, voice cracking now. I just didn't know how." I nodded. "You were going to tell me? Before or after you met him again next weekend?" Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I had found the calendar notification. buried in her phone under an event titled Wellness Meetup. Location, the same hotel. Same time. Same lie. And then I said something that surprised even me. I made you a plate too. It's in the microwave. She blinked. What? I made breakfast, I said quietly. Because I'm not the one sneaking around. I still do normal things. Like cooking. Like thinking about other people. I figured you might be hungry. Shame, really. You already fed on someone else last night. I know it sounds petty, but I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I stayed calm. And in that moment, I saw panic rise in her eyes in a way I hadn't seen before. Not because she was sorry, but because she finally realized I wasn't going to beg her to stay. She stepped forward, trying to say something. Maybe an apology, maybe more lies, who knows. I held up a hand to stop her. I'm not ready to talk, I said. And if you're smart, you won't insult me by trying to rewrite what already happened. She stood there, frozen. Then she looked down at the velvet box. I think she thought I might ask her to put the ring back on. Instead, I stood up, took my plate, and walked to the back porch. I left her standing there with a cold breakfast, a stack of truth, and the silence she thought I'd never break. But that silence was just beginning. And the message I sent later that day, it made everything explode. By noon, she was still in the house. I could hear her pacing from room to room, avoiding the kitchen, avoiding the ring, the receipt, the note, everything she had hoped to hide. Her movements were frantic but quiet, like she was trying not to be heard even though I knew exactly what she was doing. I stayed on the back porch, watching the breeze toy with the wind chimes and pretending to read a book I hadn't opened in years. In truth, I was barely breathing, waiting. She hadn't touched the breakfast, not even a glance at the microwave. It was almost funny. The woman who used to take photos of her brunch for social media now couldn't bring herself to eat because she was full of shame. Or maybe guilt. Or maybe just fear. Around 12:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was her. A text. Can we please talk? I didn't reply. A few minutes later, another. I don't want to lose you. I messed up. I know that. Please give me a chance to fix this. Still nothing from me. Then came the third one, the one that finally showed the shift in her tone. Who else knows? That was the moment I'd been waiting for. Because the truth is, I had told someone. And not just someone. I had sent a message to one person I knew would spread it like wildfire. Her cousin, Melissa. Melissa and Lana had always been in quiet competition. Who had the better house, the better marriage, the better Instagram life. So when I messaged Melissa with a simple request, hey, just so you're aware, Lana's cheating with someone named Ben. There's proof. I'm not ready to talk yet, but you should know before things hit the fan. It was like dropping a lit match in a forest of dry leaves. Less than an hour later, the notifications started piling up. Lana's phone lit up like a Christmas tree. I could see it through the sliding glass door. Messages, missed calls, group chats blowing up. Her perfect little curated circle had cracked. And it didn't stop there. By mid-afternoon, her sister had shown up at the front door, demanding answers. I stayed outside, listening through the window as Lana sobbed and stuttered. It was a mistake, she kept saying. He's overreacting, she tried. It didn't mean anything, but her sister wasn't buying it. I heard her yell, you lied to everyone. You used him. That word, used, hit differently, because that's what I had been feeling, though I hadn't dared say it out loud. Used, like a piece of background furniture in the life she wanted to perform for others. The quiet, loyal husband who didn't ask questions while she curated an image of herself as a committed wife with a strong emotional core. In reality, she had been chipping away at that foundation for months. At 4:45 p.m., she came to the porch. She stood there in the doorway, arms folded like she didn't know whether to beg or bark orders. Her eyes were red, makeup gone, her real face showing for once. I need to know, she said. Why did you tell Melissa? I turned the page of my book without looking up. Because secrets rot in the dark. You lit the match. I just opened a window. She sat down across from me. the distance between us feeling like a canyon. Do you want to end this? The question hung in the air, but I didn't answer. Not yet, because I had more to do. That evening, I called my boss. Told him I'd be taking 2 weeks off. Personal leave. No, not for my mental health. For clarity. Then I called a lawyer. And then I packed one bag. She didn't say a word when she saw me zipping it shut. Just stood there at the bedroom doorway, tears rolling silently. "You're leaving?" she whispered. "For now," I said. "But don't think for a second that this means you get to decide what happens next." I left her in that house, alone with the ghost she invited in. And when I got to the hotel that night, I checked in under a fake last name and did something she never expected. I messaged Ben. What I said to him will make your jaw drop. There's something surreal about sitting in a quiet hotel room, staring at your own reflection in a window while messaging the man who helped dismantle your marriage. I didn't plan on reaching out to Ben. I really didn't. But somewhere between the sterile silence of the room and the way the hallway light flickered like a dying star, I realized something. I didn't want closure from Lana. I wanted answers from him. I had nothing to lose. I already felt stripped of everything. My dignity, my trust, my history. The least I deserved was honesty, even if it came from the last person I ever wanted to speak to. So I typed it out. Just one sentence. Simple, sharp, unmistakable. "She's all yours now. Was it worth it?" I stared at the message for a solid 2 minutes before hitting send. My finger hovered over the screen like it held a detonator. And in many ways, it did. The message delivered. No read receipt. No reply. At least not right away. I thought maybe he'd ignore it. Block me. Maybe laugh. Maybe show it to Lana like some twisted victory lap. I half hoped he would. But an hour later, just as I was debating whether to sleep or spend the night scrolling through photos of better times, my phone buzzed. "I didn't know she was still with you. She said you were separated. Said it was complicated." I blinked. That wasn't what I expected. I was ready for arrogance, mockery. But that? "You knew we were married," I wrote back. "I thought you were just legally tied." She made it sound like a dead marriage, like you were sleeping in separate rooms, that she was just trying to coexist peacefully until she figured her life out. I sat there in disbelief, my mouth dry. The audacity, the precision of the manipulation. She didn't just betray me. She crafted a version of me that made her feel justified. A hollow, forgettable man whose absence gave her license to reinvent herself. I didn't stop. "So what now? You gonna play house with her while she spins the next story?" His reply came quickly. "I ended it, before you even reached out. That night at the hotel. I told her I couldn't do it anymore." That part nearly made me laugh. Not because I didn't believe him, but because it was so her. She got dumped by the man she risked everything for and still walked back into our house like nothing had changed. Like I'd never find out. But the next part changed everything. She told me she was pregnant. I didn't believe her. Said it was probably yours. Pregnant. That one word detonated something deep in my chest. My ears rang. My skin went cold. We had been trying for almost 2 years. Lana always said she needed more time. That her work stress, her hormones, her cycle, none of it was lining up. I held her through the tears. I reassured her when every test came back negative. We even saw a specialist. And now, suddenly, she might be pregnant? With a man who didn't even know we were still together? I messaged him again. "What else did she tell you?" He waited longer this time. That she felt like she missed out. That you were too careful. Too predictable. That you wouldn't understand her need to feel alive. Alive. That word echoed in my mind until it made me sick. So I did something I swore I wouldn't. Called her. She picked up on the second ring. "Ellis." Her voice was shaky, like she hadn't stopped crying. "Good. Let her feel something." "I just talked to Ben," I said. Silence. "You told him you were pregnant." More silence. "Is it true?" Then, finally, I don't know yet. I haven't taken the test." "You told him before you even confirmed it?" I needed someone to talk to. I laughed bitterly. No, you needed someone to believe your fantasy. Ellis, please. No, I said. You're going to listen now. I told her what Ben had said, how he thought we were separated, how she framed me as some robotic ghost of a husband, how she played both of us with surgical precision, and how, in the end, she lost us both. And then I said the words I never thought I'd say to the woman I once dreamed of growing old with. If you are pregnant, pray it's not mine. She gasped. You don't mean that. I do, I said calmly. Because if it's mine, you'll use that child to keep me connected to your lies. And I'm done being a part of your fiction. Then I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just let the silence settle around me like a blanket. Not comforting, but familiar. But the story wasn't over. Because the next morning, someone knocked on my hotel room door. And what I found waiting on the other side, it wasn't Lana. There's a moment between hearing a knock at your door and deciding whether to answer it. A small, flickering hesitation where your brain races through every possibility. Room service? Wrong room? Her? It was 7:12 a.m. I hadn't slept. The curtains in the hotel room were still drawn, and the light sneaking in from the edge painted this soft, gray glow across the carpet. My heart thudded once, then again harder. I slowly stood up, walked to the door barefoot, and peered through the peephole. It wasn't Lana. It was her mother. I stepped back, completely stunned. I hadn't spoken to Sandra in over a year. Our relationship had always been polite but distant. She once told me, "You're good for Lana. Too good, maybe. You make her life simple." At the time, I took it as a compliment. Now, I realize it was a warning in disguise. I opened the door slowly. "Ellis," she said, her voice raspy. "I'm sorry for just showing up. Can I come in?" I blinked, nodded once, stepped aside. She walked in like someone carrying a heavy weight, though her hands were empty. She didn't sit. She just stood in the middle of the room, looking around like she had walked into the wreckage of a life she once thought her daughter had built. "I heard," she said. "Not from Lana. From Melissa. And from a dozen other people, apparently. Everyone's talking." I didn't say anything. "I know you don't owe me anything, Ellis. I just needed to see you. Needed to say something before this gets worse." I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing the back of my neck. "Worse? It's already in ruins." Sandra nodded slowly. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a sealed envelope. "She didn't want me to bring this. She doesn't know I'm here." "What is it?" "It's from before all this. Weeks ago. I found it in her desk when I went to feed the cat while you two were out of town. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I thought it was a bill. But when I realized what it was, kept it, I thought maybe I was overstepping. But now?" She handed it to me. I looked down. My name was written on the front, in her handwriting. I tore it open. Inside was a single-page letter. And what it said sent a chill through me colder than anything I'd felt since this nightmare began. "Ellis, if you're reading this, it means I finally told you. Or maybe you found out some other way. Maybe I never found the courage. Maybe it exploded before I could fix it. But either way, here's the truth. I don't know how to be good. I've spent my whole life needing to feel admired, adored, wanted, not loved. Loved feels quiet, like something you fall asleep to. But attention is loud. It fills the cracks inside me. You were never the problem. You were always the steady ground beneath me. But that ground felt too still sometimes. So I chased after earthquakes. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I made you feel small so I could feel big. I'm sorry I dressed up betrayal in pretty words. I'm sorry I lied. If I could cut the selfishness out of me, I would. But I don't even know where it ends. Lana." I read it twice, then a third time. Sandra stood silently, watching me process it, her eyes brimming with something that looked like regret, but not surprise. "She's always been like this," she whispered. "Even as a little girl. She couldn't stand being overlooked for 5 minutes. It wasn't about you, Ellis. I wish it had been. But this is just what she does." I didn't know whether to scream or cry or thank her. Instead, I asked one question. Is she really pregnant? Sandra looked down. Her lips pressed into a tight line. No, she said softly. She told me yesterday that it was a lie. She said she panicked when Ben ended it. Thought if she said something dramatic, she could keep his attention long enough to pull him back in. I felt my stomach twist. Did she think she could just say that and fix everything? She thinks people are puzzles, and that she's the only one smart enough to rearrange the pieces. For a long time, we sat in silence. Sandra eventually did take a seat, her posture stiff, her eyes distant. I know this doesn't help much, she said finally, but I needed you to hear it from someone other than her. You deserve to know what you were really dealing with. I nodded, slowly. Thank you. She stood to leave. At the door, she paused. You were too good to her, Ellis, and that's not a flaw. Then she was gone. The envelope sat in my hand like a final confession from someone who never intended to take responsibility. She wrote it for herself, not for me. She wanted to be understood, but not accountable. That's when I decided I wasn't going back to the house. Not even for closure. But I did go back for one last thing. And what I did when I got there. Even I didn't know I had it in me. 2 days passed after Sandra left my hotel room. I didn't respond to Lana's calls. Not the texts. Not the emails. Not even the voicemail she left crying about how none of this was supposed to happen like this. That part made me laugh in disbelief. As if affairs follow a manual. As if pain can be choreographed. No. She didn't regret what she did. She regretted being caught. By day 3, I stopped checking the notifications entirely. But I wasn't just sitting in that hotel room licking my wounds. I had a plan. A quiet one. A legal one. But one that would leave an impact she would never forget. Not because it was cruel, but because it was undeniable. And that kind of silence? That was more powerful than any screaming match she might have braced for. I'd already spoken to a lawyer. The paperwork was being drawn up. I requested the divorce filing to be served through a courier at work, not home. I didn't want to see her face. I didn't want to witness the performance. I wanted it to feel like what it was, official, clinical, irreversible. But before any of that happened, I needed to do one thing. Return to the house. Not for her. Not for reconciliation. I didn't even need closure anymore. I needed to collect what mattered. And I needed to leave a message that would speak louder than I ever had during our marriage. So I went back. The house was empty when I arrived. I knew she'd be at work, probably pretending like everything was fine, clinging to normalcy while her world began to crumble in private. That was her method. Always hold the mask in place for the audience, even if the show had ended. I entered with one large duffel bag and a short list in my head. My mother's letters from before she passed. My journals, even the embarrassing ones. The photo of my late grandfather and me from the lake trip, the only framed picture I ever hung up myself. And the ring, the one I bought for her with 3 months' salary, stored in a velvet box I'd hidden behind winter scarves, back when I still believed in forever. The rest? I left. I took down the art on the hallway wall. Not because it was valuable, but because I painted it. And I'll be damned if I leave any more pieces of myself behind for her to step over. Then I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I had left her cold breakfast and a cold truth, and wrote her a letter. Nothing dramatic, just a mirror, something she'd never be able to ignore or twist. Lana, you once told me that I was too easy to love, that I made things too simple, that I made you feel safe, but never alive. I used to think that was my failure, that being a safe place made me boring. Now I realize that you never wanted safety. You wanted chaos dressed as romance. You wanted attention more than you wanted connection. You broke something that didn't need fixing. You lit a match just to feel the warmth of the fire. And now you're cold because the flames burned through everything. But I'm done being flammable. You asked if there's still a chance. There isn't. I've already started the process. You'll receive the papers soon. And no, I don't care if Ben responds to you again. I don't care what story you tell your friends. I don't care what version of me you craft to protect your image. Because for the first time in years, I'm not living in your fiction anymore. I'm writing my own. Ellis. I folded the letter and left it on the now empty shelf where she used to keep her glass vase full of fake white roses. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Before I left, I took one last look at the house, and it felt strange, like walking through the remnants of a stage set after the final curtain. A place once full of laughter and life, now sterile and echoing with false memories. But there was peace in it, peace I hadn't felt in a long time. I closed the door gently and walked away, but as fate would have it, I wasn't the only one planning a surprise. Because the next morning I received an email. No subject, no signature, just one line and an attached photo. And that photo, it rewrote everything I thought I knew. The email came in at 8:14 a.m. No subject, no introduction, no sender name I recognized. Just a blank body, a photo attachment, and a single sentence typed in all lowercase. You didn't deserve what she did. At first, I didn't open the image. I stared at the screen, wondering if it was some cruel game. Maybe one of her friends trying to guilt-trip me. But curiosity got the better of me. I tapped the attachment. It was a photo taken outside the hotel, the same hotel from the receipt, the same one where she met Ben. But the timing? That's what made my blood freeze. It had a timestamp. 10 minutes before she told me she was going to Myra's. And in the photo, clear as day, Lana was standing in the parking lot. Not with Ben. Alone. Leaning against her car. Crying. Talking on the phone. Who took the photo? And then I remembered. The front desk clerk. A younger guy, kind of twitchy, who checked me in during my first night at the hotel. He had recognized my last name when I checked in under Ellis T. He gave me a strange look. Like he already knew something I didn't. It had to be him. So I went back. I didn't want to. I was tired. Hollow. But I needed answers. He was working again. When he saw me, he looked nervous. I wasn't trying to stir things, he said. But I remembered your name from the booking. And I figured if someone did that to me, I'd want to know. I thanked him. Sincerely. Then I asked what he saw. She never went inside, he said. Guy she was waiting for? He never showed. She waited about an hour. Then she left. Alone. I blinked. So, she didn't cheat that night? He shrugged. Not that night. But from the way she looked, it wasn't the first time she'd been stood up. Everything began to click. Ben had said he ended it before I reached out. Lana hadn't lied about the affair, but she had lied about the timeline. She tried to recreate a moment that had already passed. To reclaim something that had already died. It didn't change the betrayal, the emotional manipulation, the layers of dishonesty. But it did change why she came home the way she did, defeated, broken, and shaking when she turned on that light. She wasn't just afraid of being caught. She was afraid of being alone. And suddenly, I didn't feel rage anymore. I felt relief, because I realized I was finally free from trying to understand someone who never truly understood herself. I was no longer a background character in her search for meaning. I had stepped out of her story and into my own. 6 months have passed since then. The divorce went through without a fight. She never contested anything. The house was sold. The silence has been mutual. I never responded to her final message. A simple, I hope you're okay. Because I am. For the first time in years. I moved to a new city. Started teaching again. Creative writing at a small community college. I tell my students that pain doesn't have to become your identity. It can become your material. And that sometimes closure doesn't come with an apology, but with your own decision to stop bleeding for people who keep handing you knives. One of my students asked me recently if I've ever had my heart broken. I told her yes, but I also told her I survived it. And that's what matters. Thank you for watching this story on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever experienced a moment that completely flipped your world upside down, share it in the comments. What's one moment in your life that changed everything? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell if these stories resonate with you. And remember, sometimes the end of someone else's story is the start of your own. Stay strong, stay kind, and keep writing your truth.